Hello, I'm Marcia Cavanaugh. Thanks so much for joining us. Well, NFL management faced the no-call controversy for the first time as a committee this week. And so far, the indication is that there will be no call about rule changes. If they need to be reminded about what a flood of criticism looks like, all they have to do is look at New Orleans, where the Spillway is being opened to divert the rising Mississippi River waters. We'll be looking at the impact of both of those stories tonight, as well as the governor's wished-for budget, what's new this carnival season, a tangled reason why the Pelicans superstar spends much of his time on the bench, and we take our annual look at political satire as expressed in carnival parades. Riding with us are tonight's Informed Sources. Errol Laborde, producer of Informed Sources, Stephanie Grace, columnist, The New Orleans Advocate, Fletcher Mackles, sports anchor, WDSU TV Channel 6, and Mark Schleifstein, environmental reporter, NOLA.com, The Times-Picayune. And we're going to go first over to Errol. And we're going to talk about Carnival. We're in the midst of it. So what's going on? What's the update? What's new?
Well, you know, if you look at, one day if people look back at Mardi Gras, like especially in the 21st century, what were the major impacts? And I think the major impact of the modern Mardi Gras was when Muses started in 2000, because it certainly opened up the way for women to participate in Mardi Gras. There were crews before that women could ride in, but Muses was like the big parade. It was a weeknight parade as opposed to the weekend parades. It just brought in a whole new generation of women. Like I say, it was the first major new parade in the era when women were such a dominant part of the workforce. And the impact it's had is enormous, not only because of all the riders that it has, and then that, of course, influenced Knicks, which almost doubled the number of riders. And this year, you kind of see it had an impact on Iris, because Iris is saying, well, look, we can't be dwarfed by Muses and Knicks. And so Iris got a new float builder and did a very aggressive campaign to get more riders. And now Iris claims to be the largest crew in terms of number of riders. So there are a lot of women participating in Carnival now. Also, Muses opened the way in terms of the people, the walking groups. They're not all female, but most of them are. And they're good and they're fun. There are a lot of them. And when I was watching the parade last night, I was watching, and it just so happened that there was a group of teenage girls who were watching the parade. And I was thinking about them, what they were seeing this, that they could stand there and they could see all those people riding on the parade. They could see all those walking groups and they can say, hey, I can do this. I can do the food, which is the same thing that Stacy Rosenberg, who founded Muses, said. That I think it was in 1999. She was watching the parade. She was watching the Druids parade. She had a friend who was riding in it. It was an all-male parade, and she said, I can do this, and it's happened. And so I think it's a major influence. And what it means is that Carnival is going to grow in a lot of new directions, that people are participating as organizers and looking for ideas. When you look at all the creative ideas that are in all the walking groups now, I think it's very, very encouraging.
The walking groups are just so much fun to watch. Some of them are just so beautiful. Some of them are just so funny. And that includes the male ones too. Yes. Also the male ones that they aren't walking, they're kind of moving along. We were just talking about it.
But one of the funniest ones is, and these are guys, these are the Lazy Boys, who are in Lazy Boy, motorized Lazy Boy chairs, and they're wearing smoking jackets, they got a little lamp, and like they're holding a martini, and they're playing Frank Sinatra music. and I've seen that maybe like 4 or 5 times now, and every time it's hysterically funny.
It really is intoxicating.
I think it's really, and so I think that there's just a whole new birth of creativity in Carnival, and I hope nothing happens that some city council grump starts trying to limit the number of groups between floats, because that's the real growth area. It's a fairly inexpensive way to participate in Carnival, yet you're close to the people. You can react, and so I think that's a very good thing.
And just really creative. There are just so many of us. We were talking about the Dead Rockers.
Yeah, somebody told me a few years ago, and I thought that was great, speaking of Muses, of the Lazy Boys and the Rolling Elvi and the Amelia Earharts. And I mean, they go on and on and on. But somebody told me that, Mardi Gras is about kings and queens, but sub-crews don't have royalty. It's a way for everybody to participate. And that kind of stuck with me because of the marching groups and the sub-crews.
And it's less expensive.
Right.
So many people do it.
But anyway, the Dead Rockers, this is the kind of walking group you've never had in a parade a few years ago. This is a group that has tribute each year to a different dead rock group.
Okay.
And you're speaking Kings and Queens. Last night it was Queen. It was Freddie Mercury. So you had like,
there you go.
So you may have had like 200 people dressed like Freddie Mercury, just walking down the way, including his little protruded teeth and his mustache. And it was just funny seeing that. And for some reason, the grand marshal of it was Danny DeVito, so they got this float with Danny DeVito, except it wasn't really him.
No.
I mean, it's a fake person. And so there's just a lot of new humor and new creativity. I remember there was a time when people say, Mardi Gras is dying, it's a thing of the past. And to the contrary, I mean, there's a whole new life out there.
New energy, new ideas, new art.
Yeah.
You've been a rider in Muses now for a while.
Well, I was one of the people who looked. I had some friends riding in that first parade, and some of my friends looked up and said, we could do that, and we joined the next year, so we've been in ever since.
And you've seen it grow, and it really is a beautiful, beautiful parade.
And we work hard on the themes, and
it shows.
It's really fun. It's, I have to say, I'm going to pat us on the back a little bit. I was on a Hamilton-themed float. It was musicals. The theme this year was musicals, and it was about basically Michael Cohen and Stormy Daniels. And then the float right behind us was about North Korea. So we just thought we really captured the news cycle this year.
You definitely did.
But in no phase of Carnival, male or female, whatever, do I think we need another big parade.
Right.
I'd much prefer seeing like these smaller groups with their own individual creativity, because I think we're kind of saturated with the super big ones.
I know that you want to move on, but I always think that I was there for the first year for the crew of Chewbacca's when it was like 24 people in the rain and it was nothingness. And now it is a huge deal that parades through the Marigny, and something that I feel like can't be missed.
And that's another significant thing, the growth of Carnival within Marigny.
Right.
And Chewbacca's is that, and then
T-Rex is
for years
wonderful.
there's been the Society of St. Anne that goes on the Mardi Gras, but there's a lot of energy and activity that comes out of there. It's not the formal parade like what we know that you see on St. Charles Avenue, but it's different ways. And that's what I like. I like people looking for different ways to celebrate Carnival.
Because the parades used to be in different neighborhoods, and now they're all kind of on the same parade route except Endymion, but so many neighborhoods don't have their own parade anymore, so now they do.
That's the police that years ago didn't want to be carrying barricades all around town, and so the police made them standardize their route.
Okay, we do need to move on. I know we could talk about for the rest of the show, but let's talk about our favorite group, the NFL, and No Call. The competition committee has been meeting this week. Any changes coming out, do you think?
No, just discussions right now at the NFL Combine, and they do have NFL owners meetings in March, and something could be determined there. Earlier this week, a lot of the owners said they weren't in favor of changing the replay rule, because once you start looking at replay, you could almost call a penalty on every single play. And if coaches could challenge any single play for any single reason, if they dug into the video, they really probably could find some type of penalty. But what happened on Friday morning was they're going to look at kind of a sky judge, they're calling it, that if there is a call that is so egregious that can affect the outcome of the game or that can be fixed in a quick way, that is something they could potentially have the officials on the field notified of. So they were calling it a sky camera or an eye in the sky camera, and it's at least something they'll continue to discuss as the owners' meetings get closer. I don't know if anything's going to change this year in New Orleans. I think everybody certainly hopes something will change, but it is kind of a slippery slope. It seems like with the technology you have, you should be able to prevent egregious game-changing calls that within seconds everybody knows were called or not called improperly. But I do understand that it is a physical game with a lot of contact and 11 players going at each other. So do you open up Pandora's box to start, looking and scrutinizing every play? And people have talked about the games being too long now. If you slow them down anymore, you may lose even more fans. But I do think the eye in the sky to prevent horrible calls like the one in the NFC Championship game. The technology is there now. It's not something that will delay the game too much, and it's something that they should be able to enact.
But I think it's almost unfair to the referees to have this TV technology where everybody can see that you're wrong, and so to allow it to play out. Because if that poor guy, everybody in the stadium knew he was wrong, he probably knew he was wrong, but yet there was no way to reverse it. And I'm sure his life has been miserable ever since then. And so as long as you've got that TV technology, I mean, that opens up the door that you got to allow some kind of response to it.
But at the same time, in this particular case, the penalty that we're talking about was a directed blow at the head. And
well, it was two,
in college football, they've already made a decision to allow those kinds of decisions to be checked, no matter what the circumstances are, and often take action as a result of that. And one would think that the NFL, especially with this, the the emphasis on concussions, that they would be
Take
pushing
every
to
step
get
possible.
that in.
Sure.
And that's where I think there has to be some kind of mechanism. That just wasn't a very good excuse of, well, there was no flag thrown on the play and there's no mechanism to go back and fix something that everyone knew needed to be fixed. So that's where I think that they have to, whatever they call it, a sanctity of the game type of, endeavor, or a sky view camera, that something that someone can see it in New York or in a video booth in the stadium and say, we have made an egregious error and we have to fix it, and we can fix it in real time. Again, they talk about slowing the games down, and I understand you don't want to get into like pass interference calls and have people say, well, it could be or it couldn't be, because some of these calls that go to replay they could go either way. But this was one that within 5 seconds everybody knew this is a terrible call that should be fixed.
So they talked about it earlier this morning on this Friday. So they're talking about it.
Right, they're talking about it.
That's about
I
it.
don't
We don't
know.
have any other indication as to whether or not they're really going to move
Fletcher-
on something.
Things move slowly, as from what I've seen with these owners. I mean, it just doesn't seem like the overtime rules in the NFL are still so antiquated and terrible that they should really enact the college overtime, but they just won't do it. So getting major rule changes enacted in the NFL is something that takes 24 of 32 owners to vote on it, and I don't know if they'd have enough votes right now, but I do think they would all agree on there is something that needs to be done, but what is the process and what...
And invite them to come to Mardi Gras and see all the floats and the people who are going to be costumed.
But this guy was a career top-level referee. Why do you think he missed it?
I don't know, to be honest with you. I mean, we've gone back and looked at it, I mean, literally thousands upon thousands of times, and he reached for the flag. I just think in the moment, and look, I'll say this, they tell officials right now, you are not the focus of the game, let these guys play, and you hear it all the time in the NBA when guys get too quick with the whistle. They're not paying to see the officials blow, we're not paying to see the officials blow the whistles, we're paying to see the players play. So I think in that moment he probably felt, let them play, I'm not going to make a call here that's going to determine the game, when in fact he should have made a call that would have, brought her on.
And not only determine the game, it probably determined the Super Bowl.
And I know that we have to move on, but again, people say, how could Bill Buckner miss such an easy ground ball? Well, again, he's fielded thousands of those. This guy's made thousands of calls. He just did. Why it happened, I don't know if there's ever a real reason.
Okay, we'll see
But
where
what
this
Marcia
leads.
said, you talked about carnival satire. This is the topic of carnival satire.
It is,
this year.
it's
You
everywhere.
can't get yellow fabric, apparently.
Okay. All right, let's go to Mark right now. And again, the Spillway has been open because of a high Mississippi.
That's true. We've got the Spillway being open this time. It's the 13th time since it was created after the 1927 flood. It's the third time in 4 years. It's 2 times in a row. Gee, something might be happening. you
Really?
think?
Yeah, sounds like it.
I think there are some things that are happening in terms of climate change, and the fact that we have had significant increases in the potential for water. What's actually causing that? There are lots of theories about it. Most of them have to do with the fact that our atmosphere, it being warmed, has the ability of holding on to water for a longer time that creates rainfall. And we've seen that across the middle of the country this year, and the Ohio and Tennessee Valley River areas which feed the Mississippi.
And so that's why the river has been, you had said that when we were talking earlier, and you said it's really been high since November, which is unusual.
It has. We've had a continued series of events that have occurred that are in part as a result of the fact that we're actually moving into an El Nino pattern where you have a warmer Pacific Ocean that is creating more clouds that are moving over the United States. We've got we're seeing the rain that's occurring right now from a system that's moving out, and there's another system following behind it. This could go on for quite a while.
So the Spillway again opened. Now they just open up, a bay at a time.
Right. They try to keep it up so that they reduce the speed of the river past New Orleans to below 1.25 million cubic feet per second, which is about 17 feet above sea level at the Carrollton Gauge at Rivertown. And so what that means is that they start opening the gates, and the gates are there's 350 of them. They don't normally get all 350 open, but they do. open quite a few, and it's a long process. They have to pull these big timbers out of each one that they call needles for some reason. And it takes a small crane that's on top of what basically is a dam that separates the Mississippi River from the lake.
Lake Pontchartrain. So it's not just flipping a switch. I mean, it's
No, it's certainly not. And in fact,
it's a big process.
You know, a couple of years ago, a couple of prankster kids actually figured out a way of getting some of those things, some of those needles open, and actually opened a couple of bays during a not quite ready to open High River that caused lots of problems.
Do they anticipate opening most, if not all, of the bays?
They don't know yet. That's the thing. It's really they're looking at a rather long period where the river would expect to be forecast to be at 17 feet in New Orleans, which is the official flood depth. So it looks like they're going to open a significant amount, at least half, but how much it's still unclear. It's a bit early yet.
And we haven't had the spring melt from up north yet.
We've had some melt, but yes, there's a lot of snow up north. But again, the concern has been the Ohio and Tennessee river systems and the flow of water into the river from there.
And just really quickly, our levees, can they stand this? I mean, this is a lot of water now. That's not usual up against them.
Right. Remember that our levees are actually designed for this. So, but the longer that you have water on them, the more chances there are that water can actually make its way into the levee and weaken it. The Corps said even on the first day of when they were ready to start opening that they had about 160 different spots between here and the old river control structure that they were monitoring.
Which is outside of Baton Rouge.
For different issues, right, north of Baton Rouge. So they're looking at these things. That nothing really a significant concern at the moment, though.
Okay, we want to keep it that way. Okay, Mark, thanks a lot. Stephanie, over to you. The governor has his wish list, but the funding isn't necessarily in there, in that budget.
It's not, which is not the same as what has happened previous years when he had wish lists and there wasn't enough revenue. There is enough revenue. The economists say that we've passed the tax, we've been through these big tax fights, and state revenue is expected to pick up for various reasons, you know, better internet sales tax, various things going on. And there's something called the Revenue Estimating Conference. We've talked about that before. That's a panel of 4 people. They're supposed to basically recognize what the economists say is expected to come in, and then the state can spend it. There's a guy who's holding it up, and it's the House Speaker, Taylor Gras. And this is really something that's part of this never-ending, real partisan fight we've had going on really since the governor has been elected. He's a Democrat, of course. There's a group of very conservative House members. Republicans control the Senate too, but it's really not the Senate, it's really the House. So Taylor Gras has basically repeatedly refused to vote to approve this revenue that the economists say is there. He's outnumbered 3-1, but he gets to hold it up because it has to be unanimous. So what that means is that when the governor proposes his budget, which he had to do this month, he's not allowed to include it. What he did was a bit of gamesmanship back, which is say, I'm not introducing a budget that doesn't include this revenue that we're expecting to get. I'm introducing a spending plan that does include it, and it includes the things he wants to do. The teacher pay raise we've talked about, that's his big campaign plank this year. Full funding of TOPS, extra money for K-12 education, things like that, children and family services. And so now we wait and see. So the legislature will approve a budget. There really isn't a great argument that the money isn't there. Taylor Gras is a banker. He has said, I'm not comfortable recognizing it. The Revenue Estimating Conference has been off before, and that's true. And that's why we've had so many mid-year budget cuts in recent years. But you know, it's an estimation game, and this is the way it works. This is the system, and no one's really said if we shouldn't use this system, we should go to this different system. So.
And session starts?
In April.
In April.
So.
Couldn't this backfire against him at the end of the budget year if there's a surplus as a result of the fact that they've actually raised all the revenue estimating conference says they're going to
Backfire against the governor.
No, against
against-
the Republicans.
Well, both, because they're almost saying you raise taxes too much, we have too much revenue, but then they're saying we don't think the revenue is going to materialize. So that's a bit of a hard argument to make. But it's an election year and the governor is up, so they certainly are going to be focusing on the fact that he did sign this tax increase that the Republican legislature passed.
Whatever
Okay,
happens,
we'll see where it goes on.
there won't be any special sessions.
Nobody wants a special session.
And right now, we need to move on to the next segment right now with, once again, with Fletcher. We're going to touch on the Pelicans. Yeah, your turn again.
Okay.
Pelicans, but in order for us to see the floats at the end of the show, just a couple of minutes for the Pelicans and what's
Okay.
going on with Anthony Davis.
Yeah, I've covered the NBA since the league relocated back here in 2002. I've seen 4 head coaches fired. I watched the team relocate to Oklahoma City during Katrina. I saw George Shinn sell a team back to the NBA and deal with relocation. And this is the most insane thing I've ever covered. It's crazy what Anthony Davis did, being prodded by LeBron James, and they share an agency called Clutch Sports. Basically, they colluded together to try to get Anthony Davis to the Lakers. And when the Pelicans didn't want to trade him to the Lakers, they destroyed 2 seasons. The Lakers are nosediving right now, and the Pelicans had to punt on their season entirely. So Davis will be traded this summer. The NBA is putting a lot of pressure to still play Davis, even though he's demanded a trade and he says he won't re-sign here. The Pelicans just want to send him home, but the NBA is putting pressure on them because he's one of the star players, and when they're on the road, people pay to see him, to put him on the court. So it's an even bigger joke that he plays about 20 of the 48 minutes a night. So it's just.
And
it's
the reason is they don't want him injured like DeMarcus Cousins, because
right.
then there's
If Davis
no
gets
value.
injured, he can't be traded this
Right.
summer. So they just want to. You don't want to
Wrap
be
him in
here.
bubble wrap.
Right.
Yes.
Let's just get him out of here, and we'll trade him this summer. That would be the best scenario. But I think Adam Silver is the best commissioner in sports. He's handled the Donald Sterling, the bathroom legislation in North Carolina, expanding the league globally. He's amazing. But this has not been his finest moment handling this situation. And again, the Pelicans mismanaged 7 years of Anthony Davis. Dell Demps probably should have been fired 3 or 4 years ago, and they actually look like the victim in all this, and they are probably coming away looking the best of Anthony Davis, the NBA, LeBron James, the Lakers, Clutch Sports. Is as hard as it is to believe, the Pelicans had a once-in-a-generation talent, squandered it, and they're going to come away probably looking the best.
And bottom line is Anthony Davis is still going to play?
A little bit.
Because-
And then he'll be traded in either late June on draft night or early July. The league year starts on July 1. It'll be official sometime early
And
July.
whoever gets Anthony Davis will have to give up a lot to the Pelicans.
Correct. And the Pelicans will get a king's ransom in return. They'll have a new general manager. They may have a new head coach. It is a reset for basketball and Gail Benson
And
here.
meanwhile, they seem to be playing better when Anthony Davis is not in the game.
Well, you have a guy that doesn't
Yes.
really want to be here and doesn't really want to play hard so he doesn't get hurt.
Yeah.
And the other guys are all going as hard as they
And they're
can.
getting their experience on the court, too.
Yeah, so it's a horrible, it's an awkward situation.
All right, Errol, over to you. Satire and Carnival, what are we seeing this year?
Satire, we've seen more and more of it in Carnival, and last night, Chaos, which is one of the satire crews, was rained out. A bit of chaos in itself, but we just want to acknowledge a couple of the floats that they would have had.
We go.
This was they're doing a thing about a theme of hugs. This was about Garden District and the B&B
Short-term rentals,
situation, and short-term rentals. And this is with energy bringing in all these people,
Right.
essentially sort of a hug for energy, which of course backfired. So that was part of
AstroTurfing, the AstroTurf.
yeah, and
Next
so
one.
that would have been then the Coup d'etat, which is parading presumably as we speak. They're doing something, paging Dr. Dayton, so they have a medical theme this year. This is there is a lot of teasing. Well, I don't know if it's teasing. Maybe it's borders somewhere between teasing and animosity, called Cat Scratch Fever, where they're poking fun. One at the crew of Muses. Muses for several years bragged about their waiting list. As you see at the top left, well, some of the waiting list is going to the crew of Knicks. Down in the lower right corner, you see Iris, which is the other all-women's crew. Says, "Hey, why don't you ever tease us?" This is terminal illness. This is making fun of the new airport. You see Mitch Morial up front promising the new airport by the tricentennial.
Mitch
Landrieu.
Mitch Landrieu. And it's been scratched out as well. Maybe it's 2002. And some people say, well, why don't we need a new airport? This is see this all kind of ways in continents dealing with the sewage and water board and the general theme of holding water, I guess is a way of putting it. As you see, that coup d'etat does really some of the really most creative satire with the type of figures. Herbal medicine, with all the emphasis and legalization of medical marijuana, this is poking fun at looking at some local products like Heavenly Hashish, with the Hubig's pods. If y'all remember Dr. Morgus and doing his own creations, and so this is trying to incorporate all that. This is all the ambulance chasers, sort of attorneys out there, and Morris Board and the different people, Michael Hingle out there. And this is poking fun at the Jefferson Parish Parade. You notice in the some of the Jefferson Parish parades have commercialism, which you're not supposed to have, and in one of them it's sponsored by Moe's Chalet. You see sort of a graveyard for past Jefferson Parish parades. To their credit, some of the crews that have just been around and that are no longer with us, to their credit, Jefferson Parish is trying to upgrade their carnival this year, and so we're going to see what's going to happen. And in the back, you notice a blind referee, which is kind of a theme that you're going to see a lot. This is the willful blindness. A lot of parades are using the theme. Seeing a lot of blind referees, and this is coup d'etat's effort. And coup d'etat also had within its marching group, which is also a group of blind referees with their sticks.
Yeah, we're going to be seeing a lot of that, the costume this Mardi Gras season, I know. Okay, Eve, looking ahead.
Well, speaking of carnival, on Mardi Gras night, the Rex Ball, there's going to be something really new. For years, the house orchestra has been a Jimmy Maxwell orchestra. This year, they've hired some members of the symphony. So this is the first time that I know of that the symphony has been playing in a society ball. So it's going to be a new sound.
And meeting of the courts here at
Yeah.
WYES, Mardi Gras night.
We talked before about the governor running for election, the Democrat. There are 2 Republicans running against him, Ralph Abraham and Eddie Rispone. There are still rumors about more getting in, and that I don't know that that's going to happen. We hear rumors of big names. They've denied it. Steve Scalise, John Kennedy. I think this is the field, but there is certainly some hoping on the
Still some
Republican
chatter.
side.
Okay.
I'll be quick. I hope the Pelicans hire Brooklyn Nets general manager Trajan Langdon as their new general manager, and I said it last time on the show. I hope they hire Becky Hammon as their head coach.
Okay, we'll see. Mark?
So let's go back to the spillway. One of the things that's happening right now is that in that water that's going from the Mississippi River into Lake Pontchartrain, there's quite a few fish that don't belong, including the pallid sturgeon, which is an endangered species, and they have scientists out there taking a look at it. You could say that they are the sturgeon generals.
Mark, okay. Thanks a lot, guys. Thank you all for watching. Have a wonderful, safe Mardi Gras, and we'll see you again next Friday for Informed Sources. Have a good evening.